I found the invitation by accident. It was crumpled at the bottom of our kitchen trash can, beneath coffee grounds and torn envelopes, as if someone hoped it would disappear forever. My son's wedding invitation. And my name wasn't on it. My name is Patricia and I'm 58 years old. For 33 years I believed I knew what love looked like. The kind of love that holds families together through storms and silences. I thought I'd given my son everything a mother could give. But that morning, standing in my kitchen with trembling hands and a piece of expensive cardstock that smelled faintly of vanilla and betrayal, I realized I'd been living in a beautiful lie. Let me take you back to the beginning to show you how we got here. Because this story doesn't start with a wedding invitation in the trash. It starts long before that. In the quiet moments where love gets tested and sometimes broken. My son Marcus was born on an October evening in 1992, 3 weeks early and fighting from his first breath. The doctors said he might not make it through the night. His lungs weren't fully developed, his heart rate kept dropping, and there I was 25 years old, terrified, alone in a hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and fear. I stayed awake for 48 hours straight, my hand through the isolette, my finger wrapped in his tiny fist. "You hold on," I whispered to him. "You hold on, and I promise I'll never let you go." He held on. We both did. His father, Raymond, left when Marcus was 4. Just packed a bag one Tuesday morning while Marcus was eating cereal and watching cartoons, and said he'd found someone who understood him better. I remember standing in our kitchen, numb, watching him carry boxes to his car. Marcus came running in, still in his dinosaur pajamas, asking where Daddy was going with all his things. Raymond knelt down, gave him a quick hug and said, "Daddy has to go away for a while, buddy. Be good for your mom." Marcus stood at the window for hours that day, his small hand pressed against the glass, waiting for his father's car to come back. When it got dark, I finally carried him away, and he cried against my shoulder until he fell asleep. "When is Daddy coming home for dinner?" he'd ask for months afterward. I told him soon, but soon never came. The child support checks came sporadically for 2 years, then stopped completely. Raymond remarried, had 2 more children, and apparently decided his first family was something best forgotten. So it was just us. Me and my boy against the world. I worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat. Administrative assistant at a law firm during the day, weekend shifts at the Marriott front desk. I'd drop Marcus off at my mother's house before dawn, pick him up after dinner, help him with homework while fighting to keep my eyes open. I missed his school plays sometimes, missed parent-teacher conferences when I couldn't get the time off. But I never missed a birthday. Never missed telling him I loved him. Never missed reminding him that he was my whole world, that we were a team, that together we could handle anything. My mother passed when Marcus was 8. Cancer, quick and cruel. That was when it became just the 2 of us, truly alone. No safety net, no backup, no one to call when things got hard. I sold her house to pay off her medical bills and kept just enough for Marcus's college fund. We moved into a smaller apartment and I took on extra hours. Marcus was a quiet child, sensitive and thoughtful in ways that sometimes worried me. He'd cry during SAT commercials. He'd bring home injured birds and try to nurse them back to health in shoeboxes. He loved building things, towers from blocks, cities from cardboard boxes, elaborate structures from toothpicks and glue. His teachers said he had a gift for spatial reasoning, for seeing how things fit together. In middle school, he got bullied for being the poor kid who wore secondhand clothes and brought leftovers for lunch. I found out when he came home with a black eye and finally broke down, telling me how the other kids called him charity case and garbage boy. My heart shattered. I'd been working myself to death to give him a decent life, and he was being punished for it. "Listen to me," I told him, holding his face in my hands. "Those kids don't know anything about who you are. They don't know how strong you are, how smart you are, how much heart you have. One day you're going to be something amazing, and they're going to be telling people they knew you when. You remember that." He did. He threw himself into his studies, into his building projects, into proving that where he came from didn't define where he was going. In high school, he discovered architecture and everything clicked into place. He'd spend hours designing houses, buildings, entire neighborhoods. His eyes would light up when he talked about creating spaces that made people feel safe, valued, at home. "Like home," he'd say. "I want to make places that feel like home, Mom. Real home." Not just buildings, but places where people can be themselves and feel like they belong. I knew what he meant. Our little apartment wasn't much, worn carpet, walls that needed painting, furniture from thrift stores, but it was ours. It was where we laughed and cried and dreamed together. It was where he learned that love isn't about what you have, but about how you show up for each other. I put him through college. Took out loans I'm still paying off, worked overtime until my body ached and my eyes burned. Watched him graduate from State University with honors in architecture, so proud I thought my heart might burst right through my chest. He was the first person in our family to get a college degree. The first to have real opportunities, real choices. He got a job at Hartman & Associates, a prestigious firm in the city. Started making good money, more than I'd ever made in my life. He moved into a sleek apartment downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the skyline. I helped him furnish it, scouring sales and using my employee discount at the furniture store where I'd picked up a part-time gig. "Mom, you don't have to do this," he'd say when I'd show up with lamps or dishes or curtains. "I want to," I'd tell him. "You deserve nice things, Marcus. You worked hard for this." He seemed happy. He'd call me every Sunday, tell me about his projects, the buildings he was designing, the clients he was impressing. Sometimes he'd drive out to my neighborhood, and we'd have dinner together just like old times. He'd tease me about my cooking, I'd tease him about his fancy coffee habits, and everything felt right. Like we'd made it through the hard times and come out stronger. Then he met Vanessa. I'll never forget the first time he brought her to Sunday dinner. It was a rainy afternoon in April, and I'd spent all morning making pot roast, his favorite. He'd called ahead, nervous, excited, saying he was bringing someone special. She walked into my modest living room like she was touring a museum exhibit on how the other half lives. I noticed it immediately, that particular smile that doesn't quite reach the eyes, that way of touching things as if they might contaminate her perfectly manicured fingers. She wore a white silk blouse and cream-colored pants to a casual dinner. Clothes that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She was beautiful, I'll give her that. Tall, elegant, with sleek blonde hair styled in that effortlessly perfect way that actually takes hours and hundreds of dollars to achieve. Her makeup was flawless, her jewelry subtle but clearly expensive. She had the kind of polish that comes from private schools, country clubs, summers in Europe. "So you're the famous Patricia," she said, extending a hand that felt like holding a mannequin, smooth, cold, lifeless. "Marcus has told me so much about you." But her eyes told me something different. They swept across my living room, taking in the worn couch, the discount store curtains, the family photos in cheap frames. They passed over me in my Target dress and sensible shoes. And in that quick assessment I saw her verdict. Not good enough. Not nearly good enough for her standards. "It's wonderful to meet you," I said, smiling warmly despite the ice forming in my stomach. "Marcus talks about you all the time. Please sit down. Dinner's almost ready." She perched on the edge of my couch like she was afraid it might stain her clothes. Marcus sat beside her, and I noticed how his body language had changed, stiffer, more formal, constantly watching her reactions. During dinner she picked at her food, moving it around her plate more than eating it. "This is interesting," she said, eyeing the pot roast. "Is this a family recipe?" "Just something my mother taught me," I said. "Marcus has always loved it." She took a tiny bite, chewing carefully. "I'm usually very careful about what I eat. Organic, grass-fed, you know. My nutritionist says." "It's delicious, Mom," Marcus interrupted, and I heard the tension in his voice. Just like I remembered. The dinner continued in that vein, Vanessa making subtle comments about the food, the apartment, my neighborhood. "Is it safe here?" she asked at one point. "I noticed some characters on the street when we drove up." "I've lived here for 15 years, I said evenly. "It's a good neighborhood. People look out for each other." "How quaint," she murmured, but her tone suggested she found it anything but. After they left, I stood in my kitchen washing dishes and trying to shake the feeling that something precious had just been poisoned. Marcus had seemed different around her, smaller somehow, less himself. But I told myself I was being overprotective, reading too much into one awkward dinner. I was wrong. Over the next few months, I watched my son slowly transform into someone I barely recognized. The changes were subtle at first. He stopped calling every Sunday, claiming he was busy with work or Vanessa had made plans. When we did talk, he seemed distracted, always cutting conversations short. How's work? I'd ask. Fine. Busy. Listen, Mom, I've got to go. Vanessa's calling. Are you eating okay? Getting enough sleep? Yes, Mom. I'm fine. I've got to run. The Sunday dinners became monthly, then every few months, and Vanessa always came along. She never ate much, always had a comment about something being too heavy, or not quite her taste. She'd talk about her family, her father's car dealerships, her mother's charity work, her sister's wedding at the country club. Where did you go to school again, Patricia? She asked once, though Marcus had surely told her. State University, I said. Same as Marcus. Oh, I went to Wellesley. It's a small women's college in Massachusetts. Very selective. My mother and grandmother both went there. The implication was clear. Her pedigree versus my public education. She'd correct my grammar sometimes, subtle enough that Marcus might not notice. Actually, it's whom, not who, she'd say sweetly when I was telling a story. Or she'd interrupt to explain something I already understood, as if I couldn't possibly grasp the complexities of wine regions or art movements or whatever topic made her feel superior. Marcus started dressing differently. Gone were the comfortable jeans and t-shirts, replaced by designer labels and expensive watches. He got a new car, a BMW that cost more than I'd made in 5 years. His apartment filled with modern art. I didn't understand, in furniture so sleek you were afraid to sit on it. Vanessa helped me redecorate, he explained when I commented on how different everything looked. She has great taste. The old photos of us, camping trips, his graduations, candid moments from his childhood, disappeared from his walls, replaced by abstract prints that looked like something from a gallery. It was like he was erasing his past, painting over it with Vanessa's preferred aesthetic. I tried to talk to him about it once. We were having coffee at a cafe near his office, one of those places where a latte costs $8 and everyone's on their laptop looking important. Marcus, honey, are you happy? I asked gently. Of course I'm happy. Why would you ask that? You just seem different lately. Like you're trying to be someone you're not. His jaw tightened. I'm just growing up, Mom. Evolving. That's what people do. Evolution is natural, I said. This feels forced. Like you're conforming to someone else's expectations. You mean Vanessa's? I mean whoever's making you feel like you need to change who you are to be worthy of love. He stood up then, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. Vanessa isn't making me do anything. She's successful, accomplished, cultured. She's introducing me to experiences I never would have had otherwise. Maybe the problem is that you can't handle me having a life beyond this neighborhood, beyond our little bubble. His words cut deep, but not as deep as the look in his eyes, defensive, distant, like he was already trying to justify something he knew was wrong. That's not fair, I said quietly. I've always wanted you to have everything, to go everywhere, to be everything you could be. But not at the cost of losing yourself. I'm not losing myself. I'm finding myself. He grabbed his coat. I have to get back to work. He left me sitting there with 2 half-finished coffees and a check he'd forgotten to pay. I paid it, drove home, and cried for an hour in my car before going inside. After that conversation, the distance grew wider. Marcus started spending holidays with Vanessa's family, Thanksgiving at their estate in Connecticut, Christmas at their ski lodge in Vermont. He'd call me on the actual holiday, but it felt obligatory, like checking a box on a to-do list. How was your Christmas? He'd ask. Quiet, I'd say, not mentioning that I'd spent it alone with takeout and old movies, looking at pictures of him as a child and wondering where I'd lost him. My sister Diane, who lived 3 states away, tried to be supportive. He's in love, she'd say during our phone calls. Or at least he thinks he is. He'll come around. What if he doesn't? What if this is who he is now? Then you love him anyway, Patricia. That's what mothers do. But it was getting harder. Every rejection, every canceled plan, every conversation where he sounded like a stranger, it all accumulated like weight on my chest. 2 years into their relationship, Vanessa started making more overt comments about my place in Marcus's life. You know, Marcus is at such a crucial point in his career, she said to me once when he'd stepped away to take a call. We were at some restaurant she'd chosen, the kind where the portions are tiny and the price is astronomical. He really needs to focus on networking, building relationships with the right people. The right people, I repeated. You understand. People who can help advance his career. Partners at the firm, potential clients. It's important to make the right impression. And I don't make the right impression. She smiled, but there was steel behind it. I didn't say that. I just think Marcus needs space to establish himself professionally. Without distractions. I'm his mother, Vanessa. Not a distraction. Of course not. I just mean that he needs to focus on his future, not constantly looking back at his past. The message was clear. I was the past. She was the future. And there wasn't room for both. 6 months ago, Marcus told me they were engaged. He did it over the phone quickly, his voice tight and rehearsed. That's wonderful, baby, I said, swallowing the hurt that he hadn't told me in person, that I wasn't even sure he sounded happy. When's the big day? We're still figuring it out. Vanessa's handling most of the planning. You know how she is. I did know. That was the problem. I'd love to help if you need anything. I'm not much of a party planner, but I'm good at. We've got it covered, Mom. Vanessa's mother is helping her. They've hired a professional wedding planner. It's all under control. Of course. Well, just let me know what I can do. And when you set a date, I'll need time to request off work. Yeah, I'll let you know. Listen, Mom, I've got another call coming in. I'll talk to you soon, okay? The line went dead before I could say I loved him. Weeks turned into months. Every time I asked about the wedding, Marcus got vague. Still planning. Vanessa's working on the details. I'll let you know soon, Mom. His voice carried a weight I'd never heard before. Like he was shouldering a burden he couldn't share. I started having nightmares. Dreams where I was at Marcus's wedding, but I was invisible, walking through crowds of people who looked right through me, trying to reach my son but unable to make him see me. I'd wake up in cold sweats, my heart pounding, feeling a dread I couldn't name. Looking back now, I think some part of me knew. Some deep maternal instinct was trying to warn me that something was very, very wrong. Then came that Tuesday. The Tuesday that changed everything. I'd been cleaning out my storage unit, sorting through boxes of Marcus's childhood things, his school projects, artwork, trophies from the science fairs he dominated in middle school. I found a box of photos from his college graduation and thought he might want them for the wedding. Maybe for a slideshow or a memory table. I knew Vanessa would probably veto anything that wasn't perfectly aesthetic, but I wanted to try. Called Marcus 3 times. Each call went to voicemail. I texted. Found some great photos from your graduation. Can I drop them by your place? No response. I shouldn't have gone over without hearing back. I know that. But something compelled me, maybe that same instinct that had kept me awake during his nightmares as a child, that had known when he was being bullied even before he told me, that could feel when something was wrong with him even from miles away. I let myself in with the emergency key he'd given me years ago, calling out his name. The apartment was empty, silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic below. I left the box of photos on his kitchen counter with a note. Thought you might want these for the wedding. Love you always, Mom. As I was leaving, I noticed the trash can was overflowing. Marcus had always been terrible about taking out the garbage, even as an adult. Some habits never die. I pulled the bag out to take it down to the dumpster for him, the same thing I'd done 1,000 times when he lived at home. That's when I saw it. Thick, cream-colored cardstock with gold embossing peeking out from between coffee grounds and crumpled napkins. First, I thought maybe it was a sample or a mistake. Maybe something they decided not to use. But as I pulled it free, my hands started trembling. Mr. and Mrs. Douglas Whitmore request the honor of your presence at the marriage of their daughter Vanessa Claire to Marcus Raymond Chen. The date was 3 weeks away, October 15th. The venue was the Belmont Estate, one of those places that gets featured in magazines and has a 2-year waiting list. The dress code was black tie formal. I read it again, and again, and again, looking for my name, for some indication that this invitation was meant for me, that I'd somehow been included in this momentous occasion. But I wasn't there. This invitation was addressed to Dr. Marcus Chun, sent to his own address. A copy for him to keep, I realized numbly. A reminder of the date and details. But where was mine? Where was my invitation? I stood there in Marcus's kitchen, surrounded by his expensive appliances and designer furniture, holding this beautiful invitation that represented a future I wasn't invited to be part of, and something inside me cracked open. Not broke, cracked. Like an egg. Like something that had been hard and protective suddenly splitting to reveal something raw and vulnerable underneath. My knees gave out. I sank onto Marcus's kitchen floor. Expensive tile cold against my legs, still holding that invitation. The truth washed over me in waves, each one more devastating than the last. All those missed calls he hadn't returned. All those vague responses about wedding plans. All those times he'd changed the subject when I asked to meet with him and Vanessa together. The way he'd been pulling away for months, bit by bit like a tide receding. He wasn't planning to invite me. They weren't planning to invite me. My son was getting married in 3 weeks and I wasn't welcome. I don't know how long I sat there on that floor. Long enough for the afternoon light to change, for shadows to stretch across the apartment. Long enough for the tears to dry in sticky tracks on my face. Long enough for the hurt to harden into something else, something that felt like steel forming in my spine, like armor growing over my heart. I thought about all the times I'd gone without so Marcus could have what he needed. The jobs I'd worked until my feet bled. The dates I'd turned down because spending time with my son was more important than my own loneliness. The dreams I'd deferred, the opportunities I'd sacrificed, the life I'd put on hold to give him a better one. And this was my reward. Exclusion. Erasure. Like I was something shameful to be hidden away. I took the invitation, carefully folded it and put it in my purse. Left the photos on the counter where I'd set them. Locked the door behind me and walked to my car with my head high, even though I felt like I was shattering with every step. For 3 days I didn't call Marcus. Didn't text. Went through my days mechanically, work, home, sleep, repeat. I waited to see if he'd reach out, if his conscience would nudge him to tell me the truth, to include me, to remember that I existed. My phone stayed silent. On the 4th day I couldn't take it anymore. I called him. Hey Mom. He sounded distracted, busy. I heard traffic in the background, horns honking, the city noise he'd chosen over our quiet neighborhood. Hi sweetheart. Just wanted to check in. See how you're doing. I'm good. Busy with work. You know how it is. And the wedding planning? How's that going? A pause. A long one. I could almost hear him calculating, deciding what to tell me. It's good. Coming together. Have you set a date yet? Another pause. Longer this time. When he spoke, his voice was tight, artificial. We're thinking maybe spring. Next year. Vanessa wants cherry blossoms. The lie hung in the air between us like smoke. Thick. Choking. Undeniable. He lied to me. My son, who I'd stayed awake with through fevers and nightmares and heartbreaks, who I'd taught that honesty was the foundation of everything good in life, who I'd raised to value truth above comfort, he lied straight to my face. Over the phone, but still. The betrayal tasted like copper in my mouth, metallic and bitter. That sounds lovely, I said, keeping my voice steady even as my hand shook around the phone. Cherry blossoms would be beautiful. Let me know if you need any help with anything. Yeah, Mom. I will. Look, I've got to go, okay? Meeting in 5. Okay. I love you, Marcus. Love you too. The line went dead. I stared at my phone for a long moment. Then I did something I'd never done before in my entire life. I started planning something that felt dangerously close to revenge. You might think I'm vindictive. Maybe I am. But let me ask you something. What would you do? If you'd sacrificed everything, given up your own dreams and desires and chances at happiness to give your child a better life, and they repaid you by erasing you from the most important day of theirs? Would you just accept it? Would you fade quietly into the background like a ghost who'd already died? Convenient and invisible? I wasn't going to do that. I called my sister Diane that night. Told her everything, the invitation in the trash, Marcus's lie, the wedding that was happening in less than 3 weeks without me. They didn't invite you? Her voice rose with indignation. Patricia, that's insane. That's cruel. You need to confront him immediately. I know. So call him back. Tell him you found the invitation. Demand to know what's going on. No. No? What do you mean no? I mean I'm going to that wedding, Diane. Silence on the other end of the line. Then, are you crazy? You can't just show up uninvited. Can't I? I smiled even though she couldn't see it, even though I felt dead inside. I'm his mother. I have more right to be there than half those guests who probably barely know him. Patricia, listen to me. I understand you're hurt. I understand you're angry. But crashing his wedding. I'm not going to crash it, I interrupted. I'm not going to make a scene or ruin anything. I'm just going to be there. In the back. Watching my son get married. Is that really so terrible? What are you hoping to accomplish? That was the question, wasn't it? What was I hoping to accomplish? Part of me wanted Marcus to see me there and realize what he'd done. Part of me wanted to witness this choice he was making, to see with my own eyes if he was truly happy or if I was right about Vanessa's influence. Part of me just refused to be erased, to accept that I didn't matter enough to be included in my own son's life. I need to see it for myself, I finally said. I need to know if I'm wrong about all of this. If he's genuinely happy, if this is what he really wants, then maybe I can accept it. But I need to see it with my own eyes. Diane sighed. And if it goes badly? If they throw you out? If it damages your relationship even more? Then at least I'll know I tried. At least I'll know I didn't just disappear because it was convenient for everyone else. Okay, she said finally. Okay, but promise me something. Promise you won't do anything you'll regret. No dramatic confrontations, no public scenes. I promise. I meant it too. This wasn't about revenge or drama. It was about being seen. About refusing to be erased. About showing my son that love doesn't just vanish because it's inconvenient. The next 2.5 weeks were strange. I went through my regular routine, but underneath everything was this current of determination. I started planning in ways I never had before, not just deciding to go, but figuring out how to go, how to present myself, how to make sure I could be there without being immediately removed. I went shopping for the first time in years, really shopping, not just grabbing necessities from discount stores or bargain bins. I went to a real department store, the kind with personal shoppers and soft lighting and clothes that didn't come with security tags. The saleswoman who helped me was kind, patient with my uncertainty. What's the occasion? She asked. My son's wedding, I said, and felt my throat tighten. How wonderful. Let's find you something beautiful. We tried on dress after dress. Too casual, too formal, too young, too matronly. Then I slipped into a midnight blue gown with subtle beading at the neckline and waist. It was elegant without being flashy, sophisticated without trying too hard. The color made my eyes look brighter, my skin warmer. I looked at myself in the three-way mirror, turning slowly. The woman looking back at me didn't look like someone who could be dismissed or overlooked. She looked like someone who belonged in elegant places at important events. Someone who had value and worth. That's the one, the saleswoman said softly. You look absolutely beautiful. It cost more than I'd spent on clothes in the past year combined. I bought it anyway. And shoes to match, real heels that made me stand taller. And a clutch purse. And new underwear because wearing my old cotton briefs under that dress felt wrong. I went to a salon, not the supercuts where I usually got quick trims, but a real salon with robed stylists and complimentary champagne. I showed them a picture I'd found online of a sophisticated updo. You have such beautiful bone structure, the stylist said, pulling my hair back to show my face. We should play that up. She worked for over an hour, pinning and curling and teasing my hair into an elegant twist. When she spun me around to face the mirror, I gasped. The woman looking back at me was refined, polished, someone who could walk into the Belmont estate and belong there. Makeup? She suggested. I nodded, unable to speak. Another hour of careful application. Nothing too heavy, but enough to define and enhance. My eyes looked larger, my cheekbones more prominent, my lips fuller. The transformation was subtle but complete. You're going to knock them dead, the stylist said, grinning. If only she knew. I practiced walking in the heels. Practiced my posture, my facial expressions. Practiced being someone who couldn't be dismissed or ignored. Someone who had every right to be wherever she chose to be. The night before the wedding, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, second-guessing everything. Was I really going to do this? Was I really going to show up at my son's wedding uninvited? Risk making a scene? Potentially damage our already fragile relationship even further? But then I thought about that invitation in the trash. About Marcus's lies. About all the times Vanessa had made me feel small and worthless. About the life I'd given up to raise him, the love I'd poured into him, the sacrifices I'd made without hesitation or regret. And I thought, yes, I'm really going to do this. The day of the wedding dawned clear and bright, one of those perfect October days where the air is crisp but the sun is warm, where the leaves are at their peak brilliance. Perfect weather for a perfect wedding. I started getting ready at noon, even though the ceremony wasn't until 4. I took a long bath, did my nails, took my time with everything. Put on the dress, the shoes, did my makeup following a tutorial I'd watched online. By 3 o'clock I was ready. Looking in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. I looked like someone from Vanessa's world, polished, elegant, sophisticated. Someone who'd been invited to exclusive events and knew how to carry herself in them. Someone who couldn't be easily dismissed. But underneath the dress and makeup and careful styling, I was still Patricia. Still the woman who'd worked 2 jobs and raised a son alone and survived every hardship life had thrown at her. Still the mother who'd held her baby in the isolette and promised to never let him go. I was breaking that promise today in a way. Letting him go. But on my terms, not his. Not Vanessa's. I drove to the Belmont estate in my aging Honda Civic, feeling slightly ridiculous in my elegant dress in my battered car. The GPS led me through increasingly wealthy neighborhoods, manicured lawns, gated driveways, houses that could hold 3 of my apartment. The venue itself was set back from the road, accessible only through a long tree-lined drive that screamed money and exclusivity. I pulled into the guest parking lot at 3:30, watching as luxury cars arrived around me. BMWs, Mercedes, Teslas, a Bentley. Everyone emerging from these cars looked like they belonged in a magazine. The women in designer dresses, the men in perfectly tailored suits. Everyone moving with that casual confidence that comes from never having to worry about money or status or belonging. I took a deep breath. Checked my makeup in the rearview mirror. Told myself I could do this. I got out of the car and walked toward the venue with my head high. Even though my heart was hammering so hard, I thought everyone must be able to hear it. The Belmont estate was even more impressive up close. 3 stories of white stone that looked like a French chateau, surrounded by gardens that belonged in a painting. A fountain in the circular driveway, water dancing in the sunlight. String quartet playing Vivaldi on the lawn. White-gloved valets directing guests toward the ceremony site. Everything was ivory and gold and crystal. Everything was perfect. Everything screamed wealth and taste and a world I'd never been part of. I walked in with a cluster of guests, smiling politely when people nodded at me, moving with purpose like I knew exactly where I was going. Nobody stopped me. Nobody questioned me. I looked like I belonged there, so I did. The ceremony was set up in the back garden. 200 white chairs arranged in perfect rows facing an arch absolutely dripping with white roses, peonies, and cascading greenery. The aisle was lined with candles in hurricane glass, flower petals scattered artistically. A string quartet played softly. Everything looked like something from a bridal magazine. Impossibly beautiful and completely impersonal. I took a seat in the very back row on the aisle, partially hidden by one of the stone pillars that supported the overhead pergola. From there, I could see everything without being immediately visible. I could watch without being watched. The guests continued to arrive, 200 of them, just like I'd confirmed. I recognized none of them. They were all Vanessa's people, wealthy, polished, the kind of people who summer in the Hamptons and winter in Aspen. They air-kissed and exchanged compliments about outfits and vacations. They talked about art auctions and charity galas and people I'd never heard of. This was Marcus's world now. These were his people. Or at least Vanessa had decided they should be. At 3:55 the music changed. Everyone stood. I stood too, my hands gripping the back of the chair in front of me so hard my knuckles went white. The bridesmaids came first, 6 of them, all tall and willowy in blush-colored silk. Then the flower girl, adorable in white with rose petals in her basket. Then a pause, the anticipation building. Then Vanessa appeared at the end of the aisle, and even I had to admit she was breathtaking. Her dress was custom, clearly layers of silk and lace that probably cost more than I'd made in 5 years. Her veil was cathedral length, trailing behind her like foam. She carried a bouquet of white roses and peonies that matched the arch, and her face behind that veil was radiant with triumph. Because that's what this was for her, I realized. A triumph. She'd won. She'd taken Marcus completely, transformed him, and now she was sealing that victory with vows and a ring and 200 witnesses. But then I looked past her, to the front of the aisle where Marcus stood waiting. My son. My baby. The boy who'd held my finger in the isolette, who'd built cities from cardboard, who'd promised to design homes that made people feel safe. He looked handsome in his tuxedo, perfectly tailored, his hair styled just so, his posture straight. He smiled as Vanessa walked toward him, but even from the back of the garden, even with all the distance between us, I could see what that smile was hiding. His eyes weren't happy. They were resigned, dutiful, like a man fulfilling an obligation rather than embracing a joy. I knew those eyes. I'd been looking into them for 33 years. I knew when they lit up with genuine happiness, bright and alive and full of wonder. I knew when they were sad, clouded and distant. And I knew when they were conflicted, exactly like they were now, torn between what he thought he should do and what he actually wanted. This wasn't what I'd imagined for him. Not this sterile, perfect performance. Where was the joy? Where was the love that makes you stupid and brave and willing to risk everything? Where was the man I'd raised, the one who cared about creating spaces where people could feel at home, feel like themselves? The ceremony began. Vanessa reached Marcus. Her father, a man with a hard face and an expensive suit, placed her hand in Marcus's and stepped back. The minister, someone fashionable and probably very expensive, began speaking about love and commitment and partnership. But I could see Marcus's jaw tighten. Could see the way his hands gripped Vanessa's a little too hard, like he was holding on to keep from floating away or sinking down. Could see the way he didn't quite meet her eyes, looking somewhere past her instead. This was wrong. Everything about this was wrong. Marriage is a sacred bond, the minister was saying, built on trust, honesty, and mutual respect. It requires that we bring our whole selves to the union, that we honor not just our partner, but also the relationships and connections that shaped us. I almost laughed at the irony. Trust and honesty, mutual respect, honoring our connections. Meanwhile, Marcus's mother sat in the back row, uninvited and invisible. The ceremony continued. Readings from poets I didn't recognize. A song performed by someone with a beautiful voice singing about enduring love. Vows that sounded like they came from Pinterest, pretty words about souls and forever and two becoming one. Then came the moment every wedding has, the traditional formality that nobody takes seriously. If anyone has reason why these two should not be wed, the minister said, speak now or forever hold your peace. Silence. The kind of thick silence where everyone holds their breath, even though they know no one will actually speak up. This is just a formality, a tradition, a checkbox on the ceremony agenda. I thought about it. Oh God, I thought about it. My whole body tensed with the impulse to stand, to walk down that aisle, to ask Marcus if this was really what he wanted. To remind him that love shouldn't make you smaller, shouldn't make you ashamed of where you came from, shouldn't require you to erase the people who raised you. But I didn't. Because as much as I wanted to save him, as much as I wanted to spare him from what I knew would be a mistake, this was his choice to make. Standing up would be about me, about my hurt, about my need to be acknowledged. It would make me the villain in his story, the crazy mother who couldn't let go. And despite everything, despite the lies and the exclusion and the betrayal, I still loved him enough to not make this moment about me. So I stayed silent. Stayed seated. Let the moment pass. Marcus-chan, do you take Vanessa Whitmore to be your lawfully wedded wife? A pause. Just a fraction of a second, but I caught it. A hesitation. I do. His voice cracked slightly on the words. Vanessa Whitmore, do you take Marcus-chan to be your lawfully wedded husband? I do. Her voice was strong, certain, triumphant. Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. Marcus lifted Vanessa's veil, leaned in, kissed her. Everyone applauded. The string quartet launched into something celebratory. Vanessa's smile could have lit the entire estate. And Marcus looked like a man who'd just signed away his life. They walked back down the aisle together, arms linked, smiling and nodding at guests. I stayed seated as everyone around me stood and cheered. As they passed my row, I looked directly at Marcus. For just a second our eyes met. He saw me. His steps faltered. His face went white. He looked like he'd seen a ghost, which in a way he had. The ghost of the person he'd tried to erase. But then Vanessa tugged him forward, laughing, and the moment passed. They continued down the aisle and disappeared toward the main building for photos. I sat there for a long moment after everyone else had left their seats, heading to cocktail hour. My hands were shaking. My eyes were blurred with tears. But I'd done it. I'd been there. I'd witnessed my son get married, even though he hadn't wanted me to. Now came the harder part. The reception was inside, in a ballroom that looked like something from Versailles: crystal chandeliers, gilded mirrors, silk drapes in ivory and gold, ice sculptures of swans, champagne fountains, tables set with china and crystal that probably cost more per place setting than I spent on groceries in a month. A band on a stage, not a DJ, but a full band with horns and strings and a singer in a sequin gown. I found a table in the corner near the exit, where I could see but hopefully not be seen. The table card said it was reserved for the Whitmore cousins, but they clearly hadn't arrived yet. I sat and watched as the room filled with guests, all of them beautiful and wealthy and comfortable in this world of extreme luxury. The happy couple made their entrance. The MC, not someone hired, but one of Vanessa's friends who apparently did this as a hobby at society weddings, announced them with flourish. For the first time ever, Mr. and Mrs. Marcus Chan. Everyone applauded. Marcus and Vanessa walked to the center of the dance floor for their first dance. A string version of some modern love song began to play, and they moved together with practiced ease, probably had taken lessons, probably had rehearsed this moment until it was perfect. But I watched Marcus's face. Even smiling, even holding his new wife close, even performing happiness for 200 guests, his eyes were somewhere else, somewhere far away. The first dance ended. More applause. Then the toasts began. The best man, someone named Trevor who Marcus had apparently met through work, stood and gave a speech about how Marcus was the luckiest guy he knew for landing Vanessa. She's gorgeous, smart, comes from a great family, and somehow she chose you, man. Everyone laughed. Marcus smiled and nodded, playing along. The maid of honor, Vanessa's sister Courtney, gave a speech about how Vanessa had always known what she wanted and never settled for less. She dated a lot of guys before Marcus, and none of them were good enough. But Marcus, he was smart enough to let Vanessa mold him into exactly what she needed. More laughter. More applause. I felt sick. Every speech reinforced the same message. Marcus was lucky to have Vanessa. He should be grateful. He should be thankful she chose him. Then came the father of the bride's speech. Douglas Whitmore stood, champagne flute in hand, his face carrying that particular expression of wealthy men who are used to being listened to. "I'm not going to lie," he began. "When Vanessa first brought Marcus home, I had my doubts. Different background, different upbringing, different world really." My hands clenched in my lap. But Marcus has proven himself. He's worked hard, adapted well, and shown that he's willing to do what it takes to be part of our family. Vanessa could have married anyone, let's be honest, she had her pick, but she saw potential in Marcus. And I'm confident that with Vanessa's guidance, he'll continue to grow into the man we know he can be. The audience clapped. Some people said, "Hear, hear." Douglas raised his glass. "To Marcus, may you always remember how lucky you are." I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand up and tell them all what Marcus really was, not some project to be improved, not some lucky nobody who should be grateful for Vanessa's attention, but a brilliant, kind, thoughtful man who'd overcome more adversity than any of these privileged people could imagine. A man who'd been raised by a mother who'd loved him fiercely and taught him that his worth wasn't measured by money or status or country club memberships. But I didn't. I stayed silent. Stayed invisible. Because this wasn't the moment for that truth. Dinner was served, course after course of food I couldn't taste. My stomach was too knotted with tension and anger and grief. I pushed food around my plate and watched Marcus at the head table, watched him smile and nod and perform the role of happy groom while his eyes stayed dead. More speeches. Vanessa's mother welcomed Marcus to the family, saying how delighted they were that their daughter had found such a suitable match. Suitable. Like he was a pair of shoes or a piece of furniture that coordinated well with their aesthetic. Then came the moment I'd been dreading. And now, the MC announced, "We have a special dance." Since Patricia couldn't be here today, my blood turned to ice. Vanessa's mother, Elizabeth Whitmore, would be honored to share the mother-son dance with Marcus. Couldn't be here. As if I were dead. As if I'd been invited and declined. As if I simply didn't exist. The lie hung in the air, And nobody questioned it. Why would they? These people didn't know me. Didn't know Marcus had a mother who'd raised him alone, who'd worked herself to exhaustion to give him opportunities, who'd sacrificed everything for his success. To them I was just an absence. A convenient absence that had been explained away with a comfortable lie. I watched Elizabeth Whitmore stand, smoothing her designer gown, probably Vera Wang or Oscar de la Renta, something with a name as prestigious as hers. She walked to where Marcus stood at the edge of the dance floor, took his hand and led him to the center. The music began, some safe, sentimental song about mothers and sons. They danced, her hand on his shoulder, his hand at her waist. She said something that made him nod. She smiled, that victorious smile I'd seen before. This was part of her plan, I realized. Vanessa had orchestrated this. Not just excluding me from the wedding, but replacing me. Erasing me completely and putting her own mother in my place. And Marcus had let her. Had gone along with it. Had danced with his mother-in-law while his actual mother sat invisible in the corner, watching her son be absorbed into someone else's family as if she'd never existed. The dance ended. Everyone applauded. Elizabeth hugged Marcus, said something else I couldn't hear, then returned to her seat looking pleased with herself. The band struck up something more upbeat. People flooded the dance floor. This was my chance, I realized. Everyone was distracted, moving around, laughing and dancing. Marcus stood temporarily alone at the edge of the dance floor, Vanessa swept away by her father for their dance. I stood, smoothed my dress, checked my courage, and walked directly toward my son. People moved around me, past me, too focused on their own enjoyment to pay attention to one more elegantly dressed woman moving through the crowd. I reached Marcus just as he was turning to find a drink, probably, or a moment to breathe. "Hello, Marcus." He spun around. His face went white, actually white, like all the blood had drained straight to his feet. His champagne flute slipped in his hand, nearly falling before he caught it. "Mom." The word came out strangled, disbelieving. "What are you? How did you? Did you really think I wouldn't come?" I kept my voice low, calm, even though my heart was racing. We were in public after all. Making a scene would only prove Vanessa right about me, that I was some uncultured embarrassment who didn't know how to behave in polite society. "Did you really think I'd just accept being erased?" "Mom, please. Not here. Not now." His eyes darted around, checking if anyone was watching. Always checking, always worried about appearances. "When then? You've been avoiding my calls for months. Lying to me about the date. You told me spring next year, Marcus. Spring. With cherry blossoms." I felt my voice shaking and forced it steady. "When was I supposed to find out you got married?" "Facebook. A Christmas card." His jaw worked, tightening and releasing. "Vanessa thought it would be easier." "Vanessa thought." I laughed, a bitter sound that surprised even me. "And what did you think, Marcus? Did you think at all? Or did you just let her decide that your mother wasn't worthy of witnessing your wedding? That I wasn't good enough for her perfect day?" "It's not like that." "Then what is it like? Explain it to me. Make me understand how the boy I raised, the boy I sacrificed everything for, could look at me and decide I'm not good enough for his new life. Make me understand how you could let her tell 200 people that I couldn't be here, when the truth is you never invited me in the first place." People were starting to notice. A few heads turned our way. Conversations near us dropped to whispers. Marcus glanced around frantically, sweat beading on his forehead despite the air conditioning. "Mom, please," he said, his voice breaking. "We'll talk about this later. Promise. Just not here. Please. You've been promising me things for months and breaking every single one. Why should I believe you now?" "Because I'm asking you to." His eyes were filled with tears now, pleading. "Please. Don't do this. Not today." And there it was, not an apology, not an explanation, not even an acknowledgement of what he'd done. Just a plea for me to make myself small and invisible again. To disappear back into the shadows where I'd been put, where I was supposed to stay quietly until he decided I was acceptable enough to acknowledge. To sacrifice my own feelings, my own hurt, my own need to be seen, all to protect him from the consequences of his choices. I looked at my son, really looked at him. Saw the fear in his eyes, yes. But also the resignation, the defeat. This wasn't a man celebrating the happiest day of his life. This was a man who'd made a choice that was slowly killing him from the inside, and he knew it. He'd chosen comfort over courage, acceptance over authenticity, Vanessa's approval over his own integrity. And maybe most painfully, he'd chosen her world over me. Maybe he'd been choosing it for years, so slowly I hadn't noticed until it was too late. Until he was standing here in his expensive tuxedo, married to a woman who saw him as a project to perfect, having just danced with a substitute mother while his real one sat forgotten in a corner. "Okay," I said quietly. "I'll go. But Marcus, look at me. Really look at me." He met my eyes and I saw it all there: guilt, shame, fear, regret. Everything he couldn't say out loud. "You're making a mistake," I said, my voice steady even as my heart cracked. "Not marrying her, that's your choice and I'll respect it. But erasing me, pretending I don't exist because I don't fit into her perfect picture, letting her replace me, that's something you'll regret. I raised you better than this. I know you know that." "I know," he whispered, and a tear finally escaped, tracking down his cheek. "I know you did, Mom. I'm so sorry." "Then be the man I raised. Not the man she's trying to turn you into. Be yourself, Marcus. Be the boy who wanted to design homes that made people feel safe. Be authentic. Be brave." Before he could respond, before I could say anything else, Vanessa materialized at his side like she'd been summoned. Her smile was sharp, cold, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "Patricia." My name in her mouth sounded like an insult. "What a surprise. I didn't realize you were on the guest list." "I wasn't," I said, meeting her eyes directly and refusing to look away. "But I'm his mother, Vanessa. I don't need an invitation to watch my son get married." "How resourceful of you." Her tone could have frozen fire. Each word was measured, controlled, designed to cut. "Though I have to say, crashing a wedding is rather classless, don't you think? Not exactly the behavior of someone who belongs at an event like this." "You know what I think is classless?" I kept my voice sweet, pleasant, the way you might discuss the weather. "Lying to 200 guests about why the groom's mother isn't here. Telling them she couldn't make it, when the truth is you actively excluded her. Having your own mother replace her in the mother-son dance like she never existed. That's not just classless, Vanessa. That's cruel. That's calculated erasure." Her smile faltered for just a second, barely noticeable, but I caught it. Behind her perfect facade, she was furious that I dared to call her out, dared to disrupt her perfect day. "I think it's time for you to leave," she said, her voice dropping to something cold and dangerous. "I think you're right." I turned to Marcus one last time, took in every detail of his face, trying to memorize it, knowing that this might be the last time I'd see him for a while. Maybe a long while. "I love you, Marcus. I always will. No matter what. When you're ready to remember who you really are, when you're ready to be yourself again instead of someone's project, I'll be there. I'll always be there." I walked out of that ballroom with my head high, my back straight, aware of every eye following me. The whisper started immediately. Who was that? Was that really his mother? Why wasn't she invited? Did you see the way she just confronted them? The scandal of it all. Let them whisper. Let them talk. I'd spent 33 years putting my son first, making myself small so he could be big, sacrificing my own needs for his. Tonight I'd finally chosen to be seen, to be acknowledged, to refuse erasure. I didn't run, didn't cry. Not until I was in my car, driving away from the Belmont estate and everything it represented, the wealth I'd never have, the world I'd never fit into, the family that had never wanted me. Then I pulled over on a side street, put the car in park, and sobbed until I couldn't breathe. Great heaving sobs that came from somewhere deep and primal. The kind of crying that empties you out completely. I cried for the boy who'd held my finger in the isolette, fighting to live. For the child who'd watched his father drive away. For the teenager who'd been bullied and the young man who dreamed of building homes. For the son I'd raised with all my heart, who'd somehow lost himself along the way to becoming someone else's idea of perfect. And I cried for myself, for all the years of sacrifice, for all the love given freely and now rejected, for the loneliness of being a mother whose child has moved on without her. When I finally had no tears left, I wiped my face, checked my reflection in the mirror, makeup ruined, eyes swollen, the elegant facade completely destroyed, and drove home. The next few weeks were dark. Darker than I'd ever experienced, Even darker than those months after Raymond left, even darker than my mother's death. Because this was a different kind of loss, the loss of someone who was still alive, still existing somewhere in the world, just not in my life anymore. Marcus didn't call, didn't text, nothing. Complete radio silence. It was like I'd been erased for real this time, wiped from his life completely. My presence at his wedding, the final proof that I was someone to be ashamed of, to be kept away. I went through my days mechanically, work, home, sleep, repeat. My coworkers noticed something was off, but I told them I was fine, just tired. My supervisor suggested I take some time off, said I had vacation days saved up. I considered it but decided against it. What would I do with time off? Sit at home and think about everything I'd lost? Work at least kept me busy, kept my mind occupied with other people's problems, other people's paperwork. My sister Diane called daily, offering support and outrage in equal measure. "He'll come around," she kept saying, her voice firm with conviction. "He'll realize what he's done. Give him time to process everything." What if he doesn't? I asked one night, lying in bed in the dark, phone pressed to my ear. What if this is it? What if Vanessa's won completely and I never get my son back? Then at least you know you tried, Diane said. At least you didn't just disappear quietly. You fought for him, Patricia. You showed up. That matters. Does it? I felt hollow, empty. Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like all I did was make everything worse. You made yourself visible. You refused to be erased. That took incredible courage. Don't let anyone, including yourself, minimize that. But I wasn't sure anymore. Had I been brave or had I been foolish? Had I done the right thing by showing up? Or had I just driven my son further away? The questions circled in my mind endlessly, giving me no rest. I started having nightmares again, worse than before. Dreams where I was at Marcus's wedding but I was invisible, walking through crowds that passed right through me, trying to reach my son but unable to make him see me or hear me. Dreams where I was drowning and Marcus stood on the shore, watching without helping. Dreams where I was locked in a room, banging on the door, screaming to be let out while voices on the other side laughed. I'd wake up gasping, drenched in sweat, and lie in the dark wondering if this was how the rest of my life would be, haunted by the ghost of my relationship with my son. 3 weeks after the wedding, I got a call from an unknown number during my lunch break. I almost didn't answer, assuming it was a telemarketer or scam caller. But something made me pick up. "Is this Patricia Chan?" A woman's voice, young, unfamiliar, nervous. "Yes? Who's this?" "My name is Jessica Howard. I'm Marcus's colleague at Hartman and Associates. We've never met, but I think you should know something. About Marcus." My heart started racing, fear flooding through me. Is he okay? Is he hurt? Physically, yes. He's not injured or anything like that. But Mrs. Chun. She paused, choosing her words carefully. He's not himself. He's been really different since the wedding. Withdrawn, distracted, missing deadlines, which is totally unlike him. He's usually one of our top performers, but lately he's barely getting his work done. And today I found him in the stairwell, just sitting there on the steps, staring at nothing. When I asked if he was okay, he just broke down. Started crying right there. I closed my eyes, my hand tightening around the phone. What did he say? He said he made a terrible mistake. He said he should have listened to you. He said he's trapped in this life that doesn't feel like his anymore. And he doesn't know how to get back to who he really was. Hope flickered in my chest, fragile and dangerous. Hoping meant risking more hurt, more disappointment. But I couldn't help it. Did he say anything else? He said his wife, Vanessa, she's controlling everything. His schedule, his friends, even his family relationships. He said he feels like he's disappearing, like he's becoming this person he doesn't recognize. And he said, she hesitated again. What? He said he doesn't know how to ask for help, that he's too ashamed, that he hurt you too badly and doesn't think he deserves forgiveness. I felt tears burning my eyes. Thank you for telling me this, Jessica. You didn't have to, but thank you. Mrs. Chan? He needs you. I don't know what happened between you two, but I know he's struggling. He needs his mother. After we hung up, I sat in my car in the parking lot, staring at nothing, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to rush to him immediately, To save him like I'd saved him so many times before, from nightmares, from bullies, from hurt and disappointment and fear. That was my instinct, my default mode. Marcus needs something, Patricia provides it. But another part, the part that had been hurt and rejected and erased, hesitated. If I went to him now, would I just be enabling him? Would I be teaching him that he could treat me however he wanted, make whatever choices suited him, hurt me as deeply as possible, and I'd always come running back to fix everything? Would I be showing him that my feelings didn't matter, that my pain was less important than his comfort, that a mother's job is to absorb whatever damage her child inflicts, and just keep loving unconditionally? I spent the rest of the day thinking about it. Through afternoon meetings and phone calls and paperwork, my mind was elsewhere, wrestling with the question of what kind of mother I wanted to be. The kind who held grudges? Who punished her child for making mistakes by withholding love and support? Or the kind who held space for growth and change? Who understood that people sometimes make terrible choices and need help finding their way back? I thought about Marcus as a baby in that isolette, his tiny hand wrapped around my finger. How he'd fought to live, to breathe, to survive. How I'd promised to never let him go. I thought about all the times I'd helped him with homework, taught him to ride a bike, sat with him through heartbreaks and failures. How I'd never given up on him, never stopped believing in him. Was I really going to stop now? When he needed me most. By evening, I knew what I had to do. I texted Marcus. I heard you're struggling. When you're ready to talk, really talk, honestly talk, I'm here. I love you. Always have, always will. I didn't expect a response. But 3 hours later, at almost 11 at night, my phone rang. Mom. His voice was small, broken, raw. The voice of a little boy who'd gotten lost in the dark and didn't know how to find his way home. I'm here, baby. Can I come over? Please. I know it's late, but I really need to talk to you. Need to see you. Of course. Come now. I'll put coffee on. He showed up 40 minutes later, long enough that I knew he'd driven from the city, probably breaking every speed limit. When I opened the door, I barely recognized him. This wasn't the polished man from the wedding 3 weeks ago. His hair was disheveled, his clothes wrinkled like he'd slept in them. His face was haggard, with dark circles under his eyes and stubble on his jaw. He looked like he'd lost weight, like he hadn't been eating or sleeping properly. He stood in my doorway and just broke down, completely collapsed. His face crumpled and he started sobbing big, heaving sobs that shook his whole body. I pulled him inside, wrapped my arms around him, and held him while he cried like he hadn't cried since he was a child. We stood there in my entryway for I don't know how long, 5 minutes, 10, 20, while he purged it all out, all the pain and regret and fear he'd been holding in. Finally, when the sobs subsided to shaky breathing, I led him to my old couch, the one Vanessa had called quaint, and sat beside him. Waited for him to be ready to talk. I'm so sorry, Mom, he said finally, his voice hoarse. I'm so sorry for everything. For lying to you, for not inviting you to the wedding, for letting her. His voice broke. For letting her treat you the way she did. For letting her erase you. I'm sorry. Tell me what's really going on, I said quietly. Not the surface stuff. Not what you think I want to hear. The truth, Marcus. All of it. So he did. For the next 2 hours, sitting on my couch with coffee growing cold in our cups, he told me everything. He told me how Vanessa had systematically isolated him from everyone who'd known him before. How his friends from college gradually stopped getting invited to things. How phone calls with me became something to hide, something that made Vanessa angry. She'd say things like, "Why do you need to talk to your mother so much? Are you a child?" Or, "Your old life is holding you back from becoming who you could be." At first, I thought she was just pushing me to be more independent. But then I realized she wasn't pushing me toward independence. She was pulling me away from everyone who knew the real me. He told me how she criticized everything about him, his taste in music, his choice of clothes, the way he spoke, his manners. How nothing he did was ever quite right, but with her guidance he could improve. She'd buy me clothes and throw away my old ones. Said they were low quality and reflected poorly on us. She'd correct the way I held my fork, the way I pronounced certain words. She enrolled us in etiquette classes for God's sake. Said I needed to learn how to conduct myself in proper society. He told me about the pressure to abandon architecture and go into finance where the real money was. How she'd introduce him to people as Marcus-chan. He works at Hartman and Associates for now. Like his career was just a temporary phase. She wants me to take a position at her father's company. Some VP role that's basically made up. Good salary, easy work, but it's not. It's not what I do. It's not who I am. And when I tried to tell her that, she said I was being stubborn and ungrateful. That her father was offering me an incredible opportunity, and I should be thankful. He told me about the wedding planning, how Vanessa had decided every detail without his input. How when he'd suggested inviting me, she'd launched into all the reasons why that would be a mistake. She said you wouldn't fit in. That you'd be uncomfortable around her family and friends. That it would be awkward for everyone, including you. She said we'd visit you after the honeymoon, have a small celebration, make it special. She made it sound like she was being considerate of your feelings. And you believed her? He looked at me with hollow eyes. I wanted to believe her, because believing her was easier than standing up to her. And I'm so ashamed of that, Mom. I'm ashamed that I took the easy path. That I let someone else decide that you weren't important enough to be at my wedding. That I lied to you about it. I'm ashamed of all of it. Why didn't you stand up to her? Why didn't you fight for me to be there? His hands twisted in his lap. Because I was scared. Scared that if I pushed back too hard, she'd leave. And by that point, I'd already invested so much, 2 years of my life, all these changes, all these compromises. I'd already distanced myself from you and my friends and everything familiar. If she left, I'd have nothing. I'd be alone and I'd have ruined everything for nothing. So you thought staying was better than being alone? Yes. And I was wrong. Because I'm alone anyway. Maybe more alone than I've ever been. He told me about the honeymoon, 2 weeks in the Maldives that should have been romantic but felt hollow. How Vanessa had spent most of the time on her phone, planning their next social events, making sure their wedding photos were perfect for Instagram. We barely talked. Like really talked. Every conversation was about logistics or appearances or who said what at the wedding. There was no connection. No intimacy. Just two people going through the motions of what a honeymoon is supposed to look like. He told me about coming home to their new apartment, a penthouse in the city that Vanessa had picked out and decorated while they were engaged. How it felt like a museum, not a home. How he was afraid to touch anything, to move anything, to exist in the space without permission. She has rules for everything. How the towels have to be folded. Which dishes go in which cabinets. Where I can and can't put my things. She threw out my old college desk, the one I'd done all my best work on, because it didn't match our aesthetic. I came home one day and it was just gone. He told me about realizing he'd made a mistake. How it had hit him gradually, then all at once. I woke up one morning, looked at her sleeping beside me and thought, I don't know this person. And she doesn't know me. She knows the version of me she's created, but not who I really am. And I realized that I'd let that happen. I'd let her reshape me into something convenient for her. Why didn't you leave? Pride. Embarrassment. Fear. He looked at me with tears in his eyes again. Everyone saw me make that choice. 200 people at that wedding watched me say, I do. How do I walk away now without admitting I made a massive mistake in front of everyone? Without proving that you were right all along? Marcus, I said, taking his hands in mine, pride is the most expensive thing you'll ever own. It'll cost you your happiness, your peace, your authenticity. It'll cost you relationships and opportunities and years of your life. Is Vanessa's opinion of you, is those 200 guests' opinions, really worth more than your own well-being? He was quiet for a long moment. Then, I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to get out. Start by being honest. With her, with yourself, with everyone. Tell her what you need. Tell her you want counseling, that you want to figure out how to be real partners instead of adversary and subordinate. And if she can't respect that, if she can't see you as an equal, then you have your answer about what this marriage really is. We talked until almost 4 in the morning. About his childhood, about his fears, about the dreams he'd abandoned somewhere along the way to becoming someone else's perfect husband. About what he wanted his life to look like versus what it had become. Mom, he said as the sky was starting to lighten outside my window, why did you come to the wedding? Really? I thought about lying, making it sound noble or strategic or less raw than it was. But we'd had enough lies between us. Because I needed to see it for myself. I needed to see if you were truly happy, if this was really what you wanted, or if I was right about what was happening. And I needed you to know that I didn't just disappear because you wanted me to, that I fought to be there even when I wasn't wanted, that I refused to be erased. Were you right? About what was happening? What do you think? He nodded slowly, tears slipping down his cheeks again. You were right. About all of it. And I wish I'd listened to you before it got to this point. Well, I smiled sadly, touching his cheek. Maybe it's time to start listening now. He stayed on my couch that night, too exhausted to drive back to the city. I covered him with the Afghan my mother had crocheted years ago, the one Vanessa would probably call shabby, and watched him sleep for a moment. He looked younger in sleep, more like the boy I remembered. The one who'd built cities from cardboard and dreamed of creating homes where people felt safe. Maybe he could find his way back to that boy. Maybe it wasn't too late. Over the next few months, Marcus started coming by more often. At first it was once a week, then twice, then sometimes 3 or 4 times. We'd have dinner together, just the two of us, and he'd tell me about his week. About work, about his struggles, about the growing distance between him and Vanessa. He didn't tell her about these visits at first. They were his secret, his lifeline, the one part of his life she hadn't claimed. Eventually, though, she found out, saw the address in his GPS history or read a text or something. And she wasn't happy. She demanded to know why I was sneaking around to see you, Marcus told me over dinner one night. Said that if I wanted to see my mother, I should be honest about it instead of lying. Which is ironic, considering. Considering what? Considering she's the reason I had to start hiding it in the first place. He started bringing more of his old things to my apartment for safekeeping, photos, books, belongings that Vanessa was threatening to throw out. My spare room slowly filled with boxes of Marcus's history. All the things that didn't fit into Vanessa's perfect aesthetic. It's like she's trying to erase proof that I existed before her, he said while unpacking a box of his college textbooks. These are part of who I am. They represent years of my life, my education, my passion. And she thinks they're clutter. 6 months after the wedding, Marcus showed up at my door on a Sunday afternoon looking different. Lighter somehow. Less burdened. He had something in his hand, a large envelope. Vanessa and I are separating, he said, his voice steady. I told her I wanted marriage counseling. That we needed to figure out how to be actual partners instead of what we've been. And she said no. She refused counseling? She said counseling was for weak people who couldn't handle their problems. Said if I was that unhappy, maybe we should just end it. So I said okay. He sat on my couch, still holding the envelope. I called a lawyer yesterday. Filed for separation. This is my copy of the paperwork. How do you feel? He thought about it. Relieved. Terrified. Free. Like I can breathe again for the first time in years. Is that crazy? No, baby. That's not crazy at all. The divorce took 8 months. 8 months of legal battles and arguments, and Vanessa trying every tactic to either keep him or punish him. She claimed he'd deceived her about his financial situation, that he'd never really loved her, that he'd used her for her family's connections. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. She was accusing him of exactly what she'd done to him. But Marcus stood firm. He got a good lawyer, documented everything, texts where Vanessa criticized him, emails where she tried to control his relationships, recordings of arguments where she belittled him. In the end, they split their brief marriage down the middle. No alimony for either of them, just a clean break. Marcus moved out of their expensive penthouse into a smaller apartment in a neighborhood that reminded him of where we'd lived when he was young. Not fancy but real. With character and history and neighbors who knew each other's names. It feels like coming home, he told me when I helped him move in. Not the physical place but the feeling. Like I can be myself here. He started decorating with his own things, the photos I'd saved, his old college desk that I'd rescued from Vanessa's trash pile, furniture he picked out himself because he liked it, not because it matched some designer's vision. He painted the walls warm colors, hung art that meant something to him, created a space that felt like him. This is a home, I said, looking around his new living room. This is what you always wanted to build, remember? Spaces where people can feel safe and be themselves. I do remember, he smiled. I'd forgotten for a while, but I remember now. He reconnected with his old friends from college, the ones Vanessa had systematically excluded. He started going to their game nights and barbecues, rediscovering parts of himself he'd left behind. He threw himself back into his work at the architecture firm, declining the position at Vanessa's father's company, and his design started getting noticed again, innovative, creative, full of the passion he'd lost. "It's like I was hibernating," he told me one Sunday over dinner. "Or maybe sleepwalking, going through the motions of a life that wasn't really mine. And now I'm awake again." A year after that disastrous wedding, almost to the day, Marcus threw a party. Not a fancy affair with caterers and ice sculptures, but a real party with real people. He invited his colleagues from work, his friends from college he'd reconnected with, his neighbor who'd helped him move in, Diane and her family who drove up for the occasion, and me. His apartment was packed with people laughing and talking and being themselves. Someone brought a guitar. Someone else brought a karaoke machine. There was too much food and not enough chairs, and it was perfect, messy and real and full of love. "I want to make a toast," Marcus said, standing in the middle of his living room and clinking a fork against his beer bottle to get everyone's attention. "To new beginnings. To being honest about who we are and what we need. To letting go of what doesn't serve us and embracing what does. And especially," he looked at me, his eyes bright with tears and happiness, "to my mom who never stopped fighting for me, even when I didn't deserve it. Who showed up when she wasn't invited because she refused to be erased. Who loved me enough to let me make my own mistakes and still help me find my way back. Mom, thank you. For everything. For never giving up on me." Everyone raised their glasses. People said, "Hear, hear," and to Patricia. And I felt tears streaming down my face, happy tears this time. The kind that heal instead of hurt. Marcus came over, wrapped me in a hug and whispered, "I found my way back, Mom. I'm home." "You are," I said, holding him tight. "You really are." Later, as we stood on his balcony watching the city lights and listening to the laughter inside, he asked me, "What if I mess up again? What if I make another bad choice?" "Then you mess up again," I said simply. "That's life. We all make mistakes. The point isn't to be perfect. The point is to be true to yourself, to what matters, to the people you love. And when you mess up, you learn from it. You grow. You don't let it define you. I hurt you so badly though. How did you forgive me? Because I'm your mother. And because holding on to anger would only hurt both of us. And because..." I paused, choosing my words carefully. "Because I saw that you were suffering too. That you weren't rejecting me out of malice, but out of fear and confusion. That doesn't excuse what you did, but it does help me understand it. And understanding makes forgiveness possible." He nodded, quiet for a moment. "I'm dating someone," he said suddenly. "I've been seeing her for a couple months. I wanted to tell you, but I was nervous about, I don't know, getting your approval, I guess." "Tell me about her." "Her name is Carolyn. She's a third-grade teacher. We met at a bookstore. I was looking for a design book. She was buying classroom supplies. She's funny and kind and completely herself. No pretense, no agenda. Just genuine." "Does she know about Vanessa? About what happened?" I told her everything. The whole story. Including the part about you showing up at the wedding. He smiled. "She said you sounded badass." I laughed. "I like her already. She wants to meet you." "That's okay." I told her I wouldn't introduce her to anyone important until I knew it was serious. "And it's serious, Mom. She's what I should have been looking for all along. I'd love to meet her." 2 weeks later, Marcus brought Carolyn to Sunday dinner. She showed up in jeans and a sweater, carrying a bouquet of daisies and a nervous smile. "Mrs. Chun," she said, shaking my hand warmly. "It's so wonderful to finally meet you. Marcus talks about you all the time. Call me Patricia, please. And it's wonderful to meet you too." Over dinner, pot roast, Marcus's favorite, which he'd requested specifically, I watched them together. The way Carolyn laughed at his jokes, genuinely amused. The way Marcus lit up when she talked about her students, clearly fascinated by her passion. The way they moved around each other comfortably, easily, like they'd been together for years instead of months. She asked about my life, my work, my interests. Really asked, really listened to my answers. She shared stories about her family, about growing up with 3 siblings and a house full of chaos and love. She had the kind of warmth that made you feel comfortable immediately, like you'd known her forever. "This pot roast is incredible," she said, going back for seconds. "Marcus said you were a great cook, but this is amazing. You'll have to teach me how to make it." After dinner, while Marcus was washing dishes, Carolyn helped me put away leftovers. "I know what happened at the wedding," she said quietly. "Marcus told me everything. I just want you to know that took incredible courage. Showing up like that. Refusing to be erased. As a teacher, I deal with a lot of parents who give up on their kids when things get hard. You didn't. That's remarkable." "I'm his mother," I said. "That's what mothers do." "No," she shook her head. "Not all of them. Not even most of them. What you did, continuing to love him even when he hurt you, giving him space to make mistakes, being there when he needed to find his way back, that's extraordinary. He's lucky to have you." Later, when they were leaving, Marcus hung back while Carolyn went to the car. "Well," he asked nervously, "does she pass the mom test?" I smiled. "Marcus, the mom test isn't about whether I like her. It's about whether she makes you more yourself or less. Whether she sees you as a project to fix or a person to love. Whether she treats the people you love with respect and kindness. So she's wonderful. She's exactly what you deserve. Hold on to this one." He grinned, that same grin from when he was a boy, full of joy and hope. I plan to. Watching him drive away that night, I felt something settle in my chest. Peace maybe. Or closure. Or just the quiet satisfaction of knowing that we'd made it through. That our relationship had been tested and broken and rebuilt, and it was stronger now for having survived. Standing here now, 2 years after that wedding, looking back on everything that happened, I think about that moment I found the invitation in the trash. How it felt like the end of everything, the end of my relationship with my son, the end of the family we'd built together, the end of the future I'd imagined. But it wasn't an ending at all. It was a beginning. The beginning of my son learning to stand up for himself, to recognize manipulation and control disguised as love. The beginning of him understanding that becoming yourself isn't about rejecting where you came from, but about integrating it into where you're going. The beginning of both of us learning that love sometimes means holding firm, speaking truth, refusing to be diminished. Was showing up at that wedding the right thing to do? I still don't know. Some days I think it was petty, dramatic, a violation of boundaries he'd set. Other days I think it was necessary, that Marcus needed to see me there, needed to know I wasn't going to just fade away because it was convenient for his new life. What I do know is this. Being a mother doesn't end when your children disappoint you. It doesn't end when they choose the wrong path or hurt you or forget temporarily what you've given them. Being a mother means holding space for them to be human, to be flawed, to be lost and found again. It means loving them enough to let them make mistakes. And loving them enough to be there when they're ready to come home. Marcus is talking about proposing to Carolyn. He's been designing a ring with her birthstone, sketching ideas on napkins at dinner, asking my opinion about what she'd like. "I want to do it right this time," he told me last week. A real proposal. Real thought behind it. Not just going through motions or meeting expectations. What does right mean to you? Small. Meaningful. Just about us, not about impressing anyone else. Maybe at that bookstore where we met. Or that park where we had our first picnic. Somewhere that represents who we actually are, not who we're supposed to be. That sounds perfect. And Mom? When we get married, because I know we will, you're walking me down the aisle. I've already asked Carolyn and she loves the idea. You're the one who raised me. You're the one who helped me become who I am. You should be the one to give me away. I cried when he said that. Happy tears, healing tears. I'd be honored, I managed to say. Last Sunday they came over for dinner and Carolyn was wearing a ring, simple, elegant, with a sapphire surrounded by small diamonds. Marcus's design. They were beaming, holding hands, radiating happiness that felt real and earned. "We're getting married," Carolyn said, laughing. "In the spring. Small ceremony, just close friends and family. Something meaningful, not performative. And you'll be there," Marcus said, taking my hand. "Front row. No question. No maybe. You'll be there because you're family. Because you're important. Because I love you and I'm not ashamed of where I came from anymore. I'm proud of it. Proud of you. So here we are. Planning another wedding. This one small and real and full of love instead of pretense. This one including me from the very beginning, asking my input, wanting my presence. This one right. I think about Vanessa sometimes, wonder what happened to her. Marcus says she remarried already, some investment banker who comes from the right kind of family. He saw the announcement on social media. All the perfect photos and carefully curated captions. I hope she's happy, he said when he told me. I really do. I hope she finds whatever she was looking for. I hope so too. Despite everything, despite the hurt she caused, I hope she finds peace. Holding on to anger toward her would only poison my own peace. I've learned a lot through all of this. About love and boundaries. About when to fight and when to let go. About the difference between being erased and choosing to step back. About how relationships can break and heal if both people are willing to do the work. I've learned that showing up matters. That being seen matters. That refusing erasure, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it might make things worse, that matters too. I've learned that being a mother is the most complicated, rewarding, heartbreaking, beautiful thing I'll ever do. That it requires balancing fierce love with firm boundaries. That it means loving someone enough to let them fail, and loving them through the failure. And I've learned that home isn't a place. It's a feeling. It's being known and accepted and valued for who you really are. It's having people who see you really see you and choose to stay anyway. Marcus has found his way home. And so have I. Did you like my story? Which part moved you the most? Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Like you didn't fit into someone's perfect picture? Have you ever had to fight to be seen by someone you love? Have you ever watched someone you care about lose themselves trying to become someone they're not? Tell me in the comments. Let me know if you've been through something similar. Share your own stories of family relationships that were tested and broken and rebuilt. And if you're going through something like this right now, if you're being erased or diminished or asked to make yourself small for someone else's comfort, know this: you matter. Your presence matters. Your voice matters. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. And don't forget to subscribe for more life stories like this. Stories about resilience, about fighting for what matters, about the complicated beauty of family and love and finding your way home. With love and respect, Auntie Helen Stories.